Hey, what's going on, everyone? Joe Menza here, and here's a little scene of a river near my house called the Des Plaines River. And we're going to try to recreate that in a simple way. I'm using 12 by 16 Bockingford paper here. It's a cotton paper, and it's a pretty good paper, I have to say, after using it a few times. I'm wetting like the upper, well, a little more than half. And I'm getting together. Here's some ultramarine blue. I'm going to keep this very, very simple. Limited, really, amount of colors here. Just a few strokes of blue. We're not going to see much, too much sky, really, here. So we're just kind of creating a little bit of a backdrop. Flat table here. If it starts running, I can tilt this table a little bit. If I don't want it to run down too much, I can change the tilt of the table. I'm coming in with just a little stronger ultramarine blue. We're not going to get overcomplicated on any skies or anything. So now I'm dipping into a little burnt umber, little burnt sienna, going into some browns here. And we're just going to make some distant foliage, some distant trees using the corner of the brush. You just want to dip in. There's not a lot of water on the brush, really, and it's not dripping off. I'd say it's like a half full brush of water, just wet enough you can see. Pay attention when you see brush strokes like this. You see how much is dripping down. It's not a tremendous amount of water. I know water control is the number one concern for people learning. And so as the brush dries with paint and water here, I'm going to just kind of dry brush some strokes in on the dry section of the paper. I'm going into my browns now. As you can see, I keep the browns together. I have burnt sienna, Van Dyke brown, and burnt umber. And so I can create a combination by using, I keep like 3 blues, 3 yellows, 3 reds, as you can see. Actually, there's 4 yellows on this particular palette. So I can create some unique color combinations that, maybe it differs from other people. You can kind of do the same thing, mix those together. It works for me, works pretty well. So now I'm adding these a little different, a little yellow, a little brown, and I'm just creating that sort of fall foliage that you see where you have, the trees have started to go dormant and that kind of thing. As you can see, if you rewind and you go back to the picture in the beginning, you can see what I'm going for here. And I'm taking some of that same, that raw sienna sort of yellow ochre look and just creating just some variation, little colors in the ground. It's really like a layering type thing. And also I'm trying to leave some white as well. Kind of using a little bit of the Ron Ranson. This is a sort of a Ron Ranson sort of a inspired type painting, using sort of the style that he teaches, which is simple brush strokes, simple palette colors, using the Bockingford paper, which I know was one that he liked. So now I'm coming in, I've got some ultramarine blue, and it's probably mixed in with just a little bit of Payne's gray. I'm carefully putting this, as you can see. I want to leave some white and some quick strokes over the top, just to leave as much white as possible. We're going more for simplicity here. We're making every brush stroke really count, and just getting that particular look. Again, going back into the browns, no cleaning of the brush. We've got blue on there. Blue and brown is a very nice combination for things. Getting some blue, some Van Dyke brown. And create a little bit of shoreline maybe. Turning the brush back and forth just to kind of get that flat edge. Again, going into that Van Dyke brown. I recommend you use, a tray of some kind. It's, as you can see, I'm using the little palette here, which works for me, but if you really want that freedom, use like a butcher's tray or a plastic tray. So now I'm using that darker brown just to create some shoreline, kind of define the edges. And these are little just random downstroke brush strokes, adding a little bit of burnt sienna just to warm it up. Burnt sienna is a nice brown because it has like a reddish look to it. So back into a little bit darker of a blue, just creating some variation in the water. It's going to look a little blue, kind of reflecting down from the sky. Nothing really complicated on the water. I'm going to keep that simple. Sort of 2 and 3 shade color variation. And now we'll go into some brown with the rigger brush. This is a number 3 Winsor Newton rigger. And you'll notice when you do this, you just push to the side. You're using the side of the brush and then kind of a quick flick, and you'll get some nice tree branches. And you can make some regular trees with this too. This is like really the purpose of the rigger. This is tree branches. And just practice a little bit with it. There's some really good tree making artists out there. And I'm sure you can do a good job with it. But make sure that dark, you see that darkness of the trees, it really stands out against the background. So it's a very, very dark brown. I like to use Van Dyke brown. And then mix it with a little blue if you want it even darker. So here I'm just kind of approximating some of the trees in that original picture. We're not trying to duplicate the photo. We're not trying to make the photo exact. The photo is there for inspiration, to give us a general idea. And we don't want to be limited by the exactness of the photo. So it's just more about getting the general feeling, the general idea, sense of calmness, a little sense of color. And I'm just jumping around and doing these trees here. And I'll put another one here. When you do these, you need, plenty of water. This little rigger does not hold much water. You need to make an inky consistency of the paint. And here I'm just sort of making some random row of little brushes and brushes. We call it brush, right? Random rows of little twigs and sticks and just dormant trees. Just to capture that feel, make someone feel like, they're right there. And just putting some along the shoreline in the back there. You can do that while it's still wet if you want a little feeling of distance. Just kind of anchoring that to the ground, the tree trunks. There's a total of 3 paintings in this series. I'll have another one on Patreon and probably another one back here. We'll see. But I did 3 paintings based on this location, just to kind of get the feeling of this area down. 3 different views of the river. Now I'm taking some burnt sienna here, and I'm just going over the top here. Make for some nice warmth. And anchoring the trees down, creating some grasses. You'll notice in sort of the pre-winter, sort of mid-fall, post-fall, after the trees are fallen, you kind of get this nice brown variation that goes from a yellowy brown to a warmer brown. And again, it's careful not to overdo it. A nice balance here, a little bit here, a little bit there. And just to give you that feel. And the important thing is after you do those first initial washes, the ones that are there, you leave some of the color that's already there showing through. Now here I don't want these completely bare, so I'm just going to kind of use the dry brush and let the bristles do the work. Go right into the paint, very, very little water, if any, and just let the bristles do the work for grass and for leaves. And it's just kind of what I do. Just kind of skip around and look at the painting as you're going and, kind of decide what you want to put where. This is your painting. Do it however you want to do it. Do the trees wherever. Randomize it. Don't. I know a lot of people do like to follow along, but make it your own. Change it up a little bit. And you'll feel like you made it your own more so than following something and having an exact replica. In the early days, I was obsessed with kind of trying to make something look exactly like the other person. And I felt like if I did, I achieved like what they were doing. But as time went on, I moved things around. Like furniture, I would move things around, in the picture. And then I'd come up with something more unique. Now I'm just doing a little more on the shoreline using that Van Dyke brown. You'll notice as we progress, we go a little darker. Darker things more toward the foreground. Save your darks for last. Your darkest darks will be probably more toward the end. So I'm going to do some shadows here. I could just leave it the way it is, but I'm going to do just use the hake sort of dry here and just kind of do some reflections. And just a little bit there. And probably those are a little thick for what's there. I probably could have did without those, made those a little bit finer, but that's okay. Take the rigger brush. Don't get too caught up in things having to be exactly perfect. Now I'm going to take my card. I'm just going to scratch in a few little rocks and things along the shore. And I'm going to do my tree trunk thing here. And just scrape off a little paint off these tree trunks. Just give it a little element of bark here. Mostly because I really enjoy doing it. I just can't help myself with the scraping. I'm just using the edge of the card to extend those little branches in the back. It's probably a little redundant looking, but it's okay. We'll get a little more Van Dyke brown. I'll just create some random foliage here and there in between the trees. Maybe a few more branches, maybe. Maybe sort of fix that shadow a little bit. So I'm going to grab a little bit more of this burnt sienna just to kind of warm things up so things aren't looking too pale. And you just go around the banks here. Now that things are starting to dry, you can kind of go over the top with some things. And we'll give it a quick dry. So here now I'm just going to touch up a few of the little, after I dried it, I'm just going to darken this little shadow a little bit more. This is toward the end, just kind of looking over things, if there's anything I can enhance like usual, is there anything that looks anything off. Not do too much more because really we've done enough. Honestly, keep it simplified as possible. Anywhere I can add just little tidbits. Just a little dry grasses there. Things that can stand out and counter change against other things. Where can I go dark against light, Again, just touching back up some of those little rocks around the shoreline. Smaller as they go back in the distance, the rocks. They're just little minor details, little things with the fingernail. Just little things your eye catches. It just adds to the overall realism. I'm just going to close up this little white spot. It's a little big. If you leave white spots that are too big, you might start getting the idea they're snow or something. So that's it for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I know a lot of people were waiting to see this one. Visit my website, joemenzaart.com. There's ways to support me. Leave a comment and all that good stuff. And I appreciate it. Here it is in its matte. I thank you again, everyone, so much. I hope you enjoyed this. Have a great week.